Jim here with Prevelo Bikes, and today I'm going to show you how to assemble a Prevelo Zulu 1. So let's get started by removing the bike from the box and then removing all the packing material. Once you've done that, this bike really only has two things to assemble. The first is the handlebar and the second is the pedals. Then we just do a quick safety check and the bike will be ready to ride. So let's dive in and get these handlebars installed. To install the handlebar, first you want to get your Prevelo multi-tool. And on the multi-tool, there's going to be a 4mm hex key. That's the hex key that's going to fit these 4 bolts. Then just go ahead and remove the 4 bolts. With the 4 bolts removed, we're going to go ahead and remove the faceplate and lift our handlebar into position. Now, when you place the handlebar into the stem, you want to note a couple different things. So first, the handlebar is just in the correct orientation. So the logo's in the front, the brake levers rest forward. So this is the rear brake lever, so you can tell when you pull, it will activate the rear brake, and then the front brake lever will be on this side. So the rear brake hose should have a nice smooth cable path. So it's going to go out in front around the frame and then into the top tube. So if for some reason the cable is behind the stem like this, or you just have it twisted in some kind of configuration, this hose needs to wrap around the frame and straight into the tube. It shouldn't be twisted in any way. And then the front brake hose should just stay out in front and then go behind the fork. Okay. Now to install the faceplate, I like to load all the bolts in the faceplate before I put it in. So just take the faceplate with the 4 bolts, stick it up there, and I like to finger tighten the bolts in just to get the thread started. So each bolt just is started so I don't cross thread anything on the installation. And then get your handlebar generally centered. So the lines here in the middle help you just center the handlebar. So get it in the center. And then as a general rule of thumb, just to start, you want the brake levers about 45 degrees from level ground. So these brake levers are around 45 degrees, and that should make the rise of the handlebar go up. You don't want the handlebar leaned all the way back or leaned all the way forward. Basically a nice neutral position. Anything beyond that kind of adjustment is going to be preference. Okay. Now to move into tightening the bolts. Now these bolts need to be tightened in a cross pattern. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you're tightening the stem, you want to note that there should be a gap between the faceplate and the stem body. So there's a gap at the top and there's a gap at the bottom. That gap should stay equal. So even though we're starting with the top bolt, you don't want to tighten it until the faceplate is pushed all the way back and there's no gap here and then a large gap here. Instead, you want to make sure that you apply equal pressure. So we're going to start here and then try to get equal pressure here and so on until the stem is fully tight. This is similar to if you were going to tighten the wheel of a car, right? You do it in that star pattern to make sure that you have equal pressure all the way around. Okay, so we're going to start on the first bolt. So with the first bolt snug, we'll move on to the second, which again is diagonally across. Now at this point, the handlebar should be snug so you can move it, but it takes a little bit of force, right? So just make sure that the handlebar is exactly where I want it before I really start tightening it down. So the handlebar is centered from side to side. It's at the rotation that I want. So now I'm going to move on to that third bolt. And now I have the 3 bolts tight and I'm still paying attention to that gap. So the gap on the top and the gap on the bottom are about the same. So move up to this last bolt, get it tight. Okay, so now all 4 bolts are driven all the way in, but I haven't really tightened them down yet. At this point, all the bolts are just tight enough to where the pressure is equal. So now with pressure on all 4 bolts, I can go in to actually torque down the stem. So I'm going to change my kind of wrench position. I was using it kind of like a driver before. Now I'm going to position it like this just so I can get some leverage. So starting on the first bolt, just going to drive it down. So about a 1/4 turn. Do the same thing here. About a 1/4 turn. So I'm doing it in the same pattern. So the first bolt, the second bolt, now I'm going to move over to the third. 1/4 turn, and then finally this 4th bolt, 1/4 turn. So there was pressure on each time I turned the wrench, but I didn't absolutely hammer on it. The torque spec for this is 5 Newton meters. If you have a torque wrench, you can use it, but as long as you get everything snug and then get about a 1/4 turn, that's about where you want the handlebars to be. All right, so there you go. Handlebars are installed. All right, so now we're ready to install our pedals. So to put on the pedals, I like to flip the bike upside down. It just makes it a little bit easier so you can get in there and put the pedals on, which is also why I like to install the handlebar first. Makes this whole step a lot easier. Now, pedals are right and left specific. So before you install, you want to make sure that you identify which pedal is for the right, which is the side with the chain, and which side is the left. So the pedal should have a little sticker that has an R and an L. If you remove those stickers while you were taking off the packing, it's not a problem. So the left pedal at the end where the wrench is going to go in, there's little dashes. You'll notice when you look at the right and the left, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, that the pedals look different. So the left pedal has the little dashes. And if you were to put the pedals like this, you can read the word Prevelo on the pedals. So when you look at them, if the logo is upside down while you're looking at them, switch the sides, and then that way you'll know which one is your right and which one is your left. So right now this is the right, this is the left. If I switch them, the logo is upside down. Okay, so I can't read it. So I have my right pedal. Now to tighten these pedals, it's a little different than some other bike pedals. So usually you'll use like a wrench and it goes onto some wrench flats. Instead, these use an Allen key that goes in from the back side, okay? So this is gonna be a 6mm, so you'll have a 6mm in your parts box. There is also a 6mm on the multi-tool. Now, pedals need to be very, very tight, and multi-tools, even though this tool can do it, you'll notice that you'll actually bend the tool if you get the pedals as tight as they're supposed to be. So a standard Allen key like this will be much better to get the pedal nice and tight. There's also gonna be this little guy in the box. This is an adapter to drive from a 6 to an 8. The only reason you would need this adapter is if you opted for the optional air alloy pedals. So the alloy pedals use an 8mm instead of a 6. So you would need this adapter to install those pedals, okay? Now, just for the stock pedals here, we're gonna get our right pedal and get our right crank arm ready so I can put the wrench down. And then this is just gonna be a standard righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So you can kind of spin the entire pedal to just get it started. But usually it's just because it has bearings in it that will make it actually spin a little bit too. So I'm just gonna get the Allen key here and get it in from the back side and start tightening it. Just what you want to avoid is cross-threading. So the pedal needs to thread into the crank arm smoothly. You shouldn't have to force anything in, so it's really difficult to spin it. Readjust and make sure that you're driving it in straight and smooth and not cross-threading. Okay, so I'm just gonna drive this all the way in. And then I'm gonna reposition my wrench so that it has the short side in. And then what you notice, if I push the wheel this way, it pushes against my wrench so you can see the crank spinning. This way it will just freewheel, okay? So if you get the crank at about a 45-degree angle like this with the wrench sticking in the same angle, don't put the wrench like this, try to get it in the same angle as the crank or as close as you can get it. And then I'm gonna push on the tire while I also push on the wrench. That will let me get the pedals nice and tight, okay? All right, so that pedal is tight. Then we're gonna move on to the left pedal. Now, this pedal is different because it's opposite threaded, okay? So this is gonna be, instead of your traditional righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, this one is gonna be lefty-tighty, okay? So I'm just gonna do the same thing I did before, but in reverse. So get the pedals threaded in. And then that trick that I just showed you with the tire, it works the same way on the left pedal. So I'm gonna get it at about a 45-degree angle, and then I'm gonna push on my tire while I push on my wrench. Get the pedal nice and tight. So that's it. The pedals are installed. Now that the bike is fully assembled, we just want to do a couple things to make sure it's dialed in for your little rider. So first, when you get the bike out of the box, it's going to have the long seat post inserted. Now this post has a small stop here. This prevents the post from going all the way through the frame. So this frame has a through tube, so if this little stop wasn't there, the post could go all the way through and be too close to the ground, and it would be a hazard. So if you need the seat lower than what this post can provide, there's a secondary short seat post in the box. So you would just insert this into the frame and adjust it as needed. Now on this post is a minimum insertion mark. Make sure that that mark is down to where you cannot see it inside of the frame. If you can see that mark, there's not enough seat post in the frame and it won't be strong enough, okay? Now once you get the seat at the correct height, just make sure it's straight. Close the quick release and then just check and make sure the seat can't twist. So if it can or can't twist, you might have to adjust the little nut on the back side of the quick release. So if you open it, you can turn to make it tighter or looser. You just want to make sure that it's tight enough so that the seat doesn't move around, but not so tight to where you can't get the lever closed. Okay. Now, once you have the seat height, after any assembly, you just want to do a safety check and make sure the bike is good to go. So first, just make sure there's enough air in the tires, give them a squeeze. If you have a pump with a gauge, you can put the pump on there and just make sure that the pressure is in between the minimum and maximum recommendation written on the side of the tire. Give the handlebars a twist, make sure that they don't twist from side to side. And then if for some reason the handlebars are crooked, to straighten that, you would loosen these two bolts and then just straighten the handlebar and tighten them down. You'll use the same wrench that you used to tighten the handlebar down. And then go through and check the axle bolts. And then all of these bolts can be adjusted and tightened with the multi-tool that comes with the bike. All right, now that's it. Let your little rider go take it for a rip and enjoy. Thanks again. Take care.